right, and thank you so much for joining us as we wrap up the final day of Future Proof 2022. It's been a great one. I want to thank you all for joining us. I know some of you, I saw some of these faces out last night at the Big Boy Show, so appreciate your resilience for bouncing back so quick and joining us this morning. As mentioned, we're going to talk about tech to modernize the advisor experience, and I have an amazing panel. Again, I'm Justin Mack, technology editor for Financial Planning Magazine, and I am joined today by Michelle Feinstein, GM and VP of Wealth Management, Industry Solutions and Strategy for Salesforce Industries, Wilbur Swan, co-founder and CEO of Catchlight Insights out of Fidelity Labs, and Andrea Bornstein-Bayer, Chief Operating Officer at F2 Strategy, filling in and being the best possible pinch hitter we can ask for, as F2 co-founder Doug Fritz unfortunately had a scheduling conflict. So I want to thank all of my panelists for joining me today. And I'm not one to waste a lot of time, and we have a lot to get to, especially with this collection of great minds joining me to my left. So let's get right into it, because as we know, the wealth management industry is increasingly becoming a technology industry, and it's not an option, it's a necessity. You want to stand out, you want to break through, you want to connect in a way that matters, you have to develop technology that enables that, empowers that, and doesn't slow you down. And it's not just about having your stack in order, it's about from the first time a potential prospect knows that you exist through what is hopefully a decades-long experience that includes generations of that family being part of your advisor family. The tech has to get out of the way and make that connection deeper. But the term modern advisor, I feel like it gets said and thrown out in a breath as if we all know exactly what that means. But as we know, this industry is not one size fits all. That could mean different things based on your perspective, who you are, your generation, whatever it might be. So, Michelle, I kind of want to kick things off with you. When you hear the term modern advisor, what does that mean to you, and how does the current advisor stay modern in 2022?
Yeah, so often, when I sit in front of clients or I talk to audiences like this, people think technology when they think about the modern advisor, but that's really not the end of the story. Modern advisors are really starting to approach their practices and the way they engage with clients with very much of a growth mindset, right? So maybe they've been doing things a certain way over a 5 or 10 year period, but the world has changed greatly. And so what I see with modern advisors is they're starting to look out in the marketplace and recognize there are 5 generations of clients right now in the market that they have to face off to. They can't work with them in a one-size-fits-all type of model, right? So you have the silent generation, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. They all have a different kind of feeling when it comes to, do they trust advisors? Do they feel like they need an advisor? Do they want to use technology? And when it comes to the products and services that are going to best serve them right now, it's different for each and every one of them. Right, you look at the Gen Zs right now that are coming into the world. I've heard the term Henrys, high earning but not rich yet. My son's definitely one of those people. So they're coming out starting with 6-figure salaries, but they have no idea what to do with their stock options or 401ks or even how to do a budget. And so it starts to present a whole different set of needs that advisors have to think about just for that slice of customer. Technology certainly plays a part, right? So the modern advisor understands to scale their reach, to show their clients personalization. They can't meet with them once a year, right? Those touches have to be frequent and often, but technology can be an enabler to help them extend that reach.
Absolutely.
I'll add 2 things to that. So the term modern advisor is fascinating to me, and I don't think it's necessarily an age. We're doing some very modern stuff in Fidelity Labs, and we look at the demographic of our users. Some of them are younger advisors, more in the late 20s, 30s, maybe early 40s. But the average age of our solution actually is 52, which I find fascinating. And also, you get up to folks that we have users into their advisors that are into their 70s. Fascinating.
So yeah, that modern advisor doesn't mean new or young or brand.
Right.
It's whoever is actually adopting this technology in a way that makes sense. So there's no limit, and it's never too late to become one if you feel like you're not yet.
Exactly. I'll add one more point to that too, and it's about teaming. So maybe historically advisors were more territorial about their book, their practice, their clients, but the modern advisors are starting to realize they can't do it all themselves. They can't be experts in everything, and so they're starting to look for expertise that they can pull into their practice to make it a more concierge type service.
Definitely. And Andrea, I'd love to get your thoughts too, because we know F2 always looking at what's next, taking a look at that data, ear to the streets, if you will. So when you hear kind of what's been expressed by Michelle and Wilbur so far, that modern advisor, not only I want to get your take on what that means, but what's at stake? You know, let's figure out if you don't get caught up to speed, what do you stand to lose? Because we talked about what there is to gain, but it's kind of a dangerous line to be walking if you're still resistant in any way, which I don't know how you could be.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've had some great conversations with people at this conference and our clients recently, and the things that come up are really, you know, they want to use technology to scale, they want to use technology to provide a better client experience, and they want to use technology to really differentiate in the market. And really all of that comes down to engaging in a more meaningful way with their clients. So not just looking at data and tools to capture a 10-question risk questionnaire or to spit out a risk tolerance number or some bucket that they're labeled into, but really using tools to drive deep, meaningful conversations. And I think that's the thing that comes up the most often with our clients right now, and we see that in the industry, and we see people really wanting to get ahead of the storm, so to speak, right? You know, if we look back at 2020, March 2020, the firms that had already made an early investment in automating their processes, in doing paperless onboarding and client account opening, in embracing mobile technology and video communications were far, far, far ahead of the game and really didn't struggle the way some of their peers who hadn't done any of that. You know, we heard in 2019, we were having conversations where people were like, well, we're just not ready for mobile. We don't know if we can do that. Well, our clients want to meet face-to-face. They don't want to meet in a video scenario. Well, our compliance says it has to be signed on paper. We can't use, DocuSign or any type of digital signature. Bang, one day, the whole world changes. So interestingly, we saw, or expectedly, I guess, we saw technology spend skyrocket in 2020. Surprisingly, we saw that technology spend continue into 2021. So we got through the storm. Those who were kind of thinking about technology as they were lowering the lifeboats were like, well, we better do something. We settled out. And people sat back and said, I don't want to be caught in this situation again. I want to be prepared. And so the modern advisor is also prepared. They're forward-thinking. They're investing in technology early. They're automating those processes. They're moving to digital. They're thinking about their client experience. And they're building integrated tools that are really leveraging data that help them communicate with their clients in a really efficient, timely, and effective manner.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to remind folks, too, we have questions coming in, and feel free to submit your Q&A questions using Slido or the Futureproof app. If you aren't joined Slido yet, which you should be, Slido.com, use that hashtag FutureproofAC to get your questions in. We'll make sure to save some time at the end and weave them in as they make sense in the conversation. And, Andrea, I kind of want to continue talking about that storm you mentioned.
Yeah, the storm.
The importance of that, and get, of course, your thoughts as well, Wilbur and Michelle. But we talk about that experience and what clients might be experiencing during a difficult time, and how when things clear out and people are doing better, the option exists that, well, I was working with this advisor and I had a really tough time. We know it's not the advisor's fault, but there's a mental correlation between difficulty and who you were working with through that difficulty. And when the storm clears and people are ready to make a move because of the access they have through technology, finding a new advisor is as long as it takes for me to order a pizza or call an Uber. Andrea, your thoughts on advisors retaining that and reminding folks that, hey, I'm here with you through the good and the bad when that storm clears?
That's a great question. Research has consistently shown that the reason individuals leave their advisors is not price, it's not performance, it's all about communication and understanding, right? My advisor didn't understand my needs, and they didn't communicate either in a timely manner or efficiently or effectively or in the way I want to be communicated with. That's been consistent for long before these past two recent crises. And so the key to that is using technology to build trust and confidence. So trust in the fact that you understand, right? You want your clients to know that you understand their needs, that you're like I said earlier, you're diving in a little bit deeper beyond just, hey, you're a moderate or aggressive investor with a 10-year time horizon and you're X years old and you've got X amount of money. But how do you feel? about investing in wealth, and really, what drives you and what keeps you up at night, and what's going to make you happy and feel comforted. And I think that's a big thing, feeling that comfort in the storm. And so they want to be able to look back and say, I felt comforted. I trust that they were doing the right thing. I'm confident that they were giving me a personalized experience in communications, that I just didn't get something blasted out that was the same message that went, to everybody and all the clients in the entire industry. And so how do you use tools and technology, using AI type of technology, making sure you've got your CRM up to date, so you've got all that information. You've got really robust behavioral profiles on your clients, and you're able to take that and turn that into meaningful conversations that are timely and relevant.
Definitely. Any additional thoughts, Michelle or Wilbur?
Andrea covered quite a bit there, so
Absolutely.
I don't want to be redundant or repetitive to her. There's a question here if you could provide one piece of advice regarding tech adoption and the use of software. The firms that I've seen do it well, they're bringing their advisors in at the earliest point, right? Whether you're an REA, an independent advisor, they're starting to change. Like when they're isolating certain business processes to re-engineer, they're saying, what will have the highest impact to improving the client experience? Let's only focus on those processes. So I'd say things like new account opening, asset movement, moving assets from one organization to another, onboarding advisors to a firm. This is where I see wealth firms kind of prioritizing the re-engineering efforts. But what they're also doing is bringing the advisors in every step of the way as they're introducing first instances of those new experiences and getting feedback from the advisors saying, does this realistically work in your world? The firms are also willing to pivot then and take that advice and apply it before they do a mass rollout. So from an adoption standpoint, that's one piece, I would say. Going back to something Andrea said about retaining advisors and advisors retaining their clients, I think a big piece that can often get missed is education. Mm-hmm. Advisors have a tremendous opportunity to be that single source for the entire household that they're managing if they can find a way to reach in and get every member of that household to see them as a valuable asset. It's not just about portfolio and investments and the 401k, but it's also about, hey, are you looking for a better mortgage provider? Are you looking to find credit solutions or lending solutions? And that advisor then points them to those solutions, the best ones that are going to fit their needs. So now the advisor's value starts to grow.
Absolutely.
I'll add to that and say, we think about modern technology and experimentation. The field is moving so quickly. Labs at Fidelity is working on a ton of innovation across multiple areas. And I think, our motto within Labs is, crawl, walk, run, or their scan, try, scale. I think any field where things are moving super, super quickly, you got to get in, you got to get your hands dirty. Adam Shuela on Sunday did a great presentation from FCAT, which is our applied technology area, that they're always experimenting with technology. And I think, you may feel like you're not making progress early on with some of these AI technologies, but believe me, you are. You're just getting familiarity with them and getting, as Michelle said, kind of feedback from people that are actually using this in the field. And then you learn, evolve, and you can get to that walk and run stage, which I think if you don't do, then you're just left behind. I mean, Mark Cuban had a great quote where he said, if you're not experimenting with AI, you're going to be left behind as a dinosaur. I absolutely believe that's true.
There's an important question here I want to address. A lot of firms will say, what is the placemat for success? How do you actually pull this off, right? How do we transform? How do we look at our existing infrastructure, architecture, experiences, and choose where to begin, right? What's the framework? So I've seen a lot of firms recently when they engage a third party like Salesforce or anyone else, they'll say, can you help us just blueprint our current state? Right? And so they'll bring different heads of lines of business, the advisors, whoever is using those experiences today, are impacted in any way. Even folks that support the advisor from legal, compliance, operations, they're all at the table, right? And so they blueprint the current state. And then for every provider they bring in, they start to Gantt their capabilities against the gaps in that blueprint. The other thing I think that successful firms do is they're very clear and strategic about the vision and kind of firm and how they want to show up to their clients. So you can't do the kitchen sink, you can't do everything, but if you can strategically pick 3 key things, right? I want to give my advisors an at-a-glance view of all things happening with the client. that turns into a dashboard you want to build as an example.
Definitely, definitely. Now, Wilbur, I hope it's all right if you nerd out with me for a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's get nerdy, brother. Let's talk about growth and prospecting, something that we've been kind of figuring out how we're going to tackle in the lead up to this, but really want to dive in with some of the data I know you're working with Catchlight out of Fidelity Labs about how much time advisors spend on business development and how the solutions like you're creating, like so many others are creating, and you mentioned that Cuban quote about AI, get on or kind of get lost. What kind of time sink is that for advisors, and how is tech cutting down on that, giving that time back?
Yeah, so I was thinking about comments for today. I first wanted to thank the organizers of this conference. It's been phenomenal. I've never had a conference where I've been able to surf one day and actually go to a session and meet advisors the next day. So kudos to them, huge. I think the theme of the conference is amazing. You think about future-proof. How do you proof yourself for the future? And I think in that area of AI, sales, marketing, organic growth, I've worked both within startups, I've worked a lot with advisors, I've worked within very large organizations like Fidelity, and I think, if you think about the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed. That's absolutely true. So what we're doing within Catchlight is within Fidelity Labs. It's basically the startup incubator within Fidelity. You can think of it like as a Y Combinator. We're working on technology for identifying risk and marketing documentation that advisors may want to use called Safer. It's great, fascinating. Check it out. You can check out the whole Fidelity Labs portfolio online. But in Catchlight's case, we're really focused, and our passion is helping advisors accelerate organic growth through the leverage of the kinds of data science and AI techniques that big companies use, but packaged up in a simple way that a single advisor can use it, a marketer can use it, or an entire firm can use it, and think about how to tap into that. I'd say this goes back to your point, a lot of research that we did in 2019 with advisors, really talking to hundreds of them and surveying many, many more about what are your top priorities? And many things came up, but what kept floating to the top of the list, even in those buoyant markets, was we want to get better at organic growth. We want to get better at organic growth. How do we grow more quickly? And we said, okay, so tell us more. Like, what approaches are you taking? Remember, this is right in the middle of COVID, and they were saying, well, a lot of us are behind our Zoom. We're trying a lot of experiments, just tons. We're doing some things where we're trying, building our websites better, or we're trying more social media, or we're buying ads, or we're trying to push more for referrals. We're doing more with centers of influence. We are perhaps buying leads from some of the lead gen providers. And we said, whoa, what's going on here? This is crazy. So we said, how's it going? And generally said, well, we feel like we're running to stand still. Like we're just, we're putting in a ton of effort. For some of these efforts, we're seeing kind of a 2 to 3% conversion rate, which means if you're reaching out to 100 people, you're getting maybe 2 or 3. I'd say the ROI is still there because the business is so phenomenal, but it's a lot of effort, right? And they're always saying, again, we feel like we're running to stand still. We got to figure out how to get better and better at it. So what we began talking to them about is, some of the things that large organizations do to think about how do you better understand the prospects you're engaging with? How do you collect all that information in one place where you can begin doing some modeling on it? How can you, for example, our data science team has a lot of work on, who is your best prospect on a given week? How do you best engage with that person? What types of topics do you want to engage with that person on? All things that, if you can do, increase your efficiency because you're improving your focus. You're focused on your best prospects versus those that aren't really too qualified for paid financial advice. And then secondly, you're having the kinds of engagement, the kinds of marketing that's more personalized. It's more, you think about modern segmentation. You're delivering more of the message that's going to resonate with that individual. And therefore, the advisors that are using this kind of approach are seeing 2 to 3 times better efficiency out of that marketing and sales approach. So we took all of that. We, like a startup, we're always crawl, walk, running. We're iterating. Getting lots of feedback from advisors. We did a lot of beta work leading up to last fall. We did a soft launch with a bunch of clients who were actually beginning to pay for the solution. And then we did a more formal launch at T3, which was great. That was a fun conference. Recommend folks try that out next year as well. And we're building out from there, adding in more and more insights to the solution based on feedback, beginning to look at not only what's going on with the prospects for an advisor, but also, what can you model off of an advisor's book so that really, I think the advisory space is so unique that that you all have such great pitches and are developing such niches that are so powerful that if you can match who you want to go after in your book with the types of prospects you're going after, you can get into more and better response rates. So for some large firms, we're starting to build some of these custom data science models that are really patterned off of, look at their office, look at all their advisors. Let's tune these models so we can find the best prospects to fit for a given advisor. So I'll wrap that up last. So that's all delivered now via simple web app that a single advisor can use, or via a data engine that we're starting to integrate and talk about how does this fit into a digital marketing workflow and into a CRM workflow.
Could I add one point to that
Absolutely.
thread? Okay. So everything you said, love it. And I think to continue that thread, it's also about productivity. So at Salesforce, we've been doubling down on providing more insights for advisors through Financial Services Cloud, Service Cloud, the Marketing Cloud. How can we automate the customer journey for you so everything is not manual, right? So I think there was a question around how do you automate and enhance the prospecting experience. Yes. So some of the things we've introduced lately are enhancements to our scheduler tool, making it easier for you to automate pre-meetings, post-meetings, and then any of the activities, having them show up as tasks. So you see a list, but you can actually action that list automatically. The other is transparency, like letting clients just come in, sounds a little scary, and have access to your calendar and just find the slots of time that you've made available so that they can feel like they're engaging with you kind of on their terms as opposed to being dictated to in terms of when a meeting can occur. So just some examples.
For sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. What I love about what you're doing is it deepens the conversation earlier in the relationship, right? So you're gathering all this really rich information about your prospects. You're really understanding who they are at a point in time that they become clients, and you can move that forward throughout the entire relationship. You can start using data science to say, okay, going back to the behavioral aspects of it, making better decisions, communicating in the way that they want to be communicated with, and driving your relationship and driving your decisions about technology, based on that. So I think starting at the beginning is fantastic. So many times we see people coming in and they say, I've got, I know I need to do something with technology. I just don't know what to do. Can you help me develop a roadmap? Can you help me figure out the plan? And oh, by the way, let's start with our portfolio management system. Like, well, you actually have to start at the beginning. And the beginning
right.
is when they're a prospect and when you're gathering the information about them. And then when they're becoming a client and they're onboarding them, what is that experience like? What is the digital experience like? What is the process? What is the in-person experience like? And carry that all the way through. Because if you start at the end, you're just going to miss everything.
Absolutely.
First impressions last.
First impressions
Absolutely.
last, yeah.
Big time. And now you have so much, I guess, a shorter opportunity to do that and more people trying to make that strong first impression. So if you don't nail it out the gate, you might be in a tough spot. Also, to remind folks, keep sending in those questions via Slido and the Future Proof app. We've got some great ones coming in. Please keep sending them our way. I want to jump into one as a way to kind of get into another part of the conversation I wanted to talk about, which was average IT spend, percentage of revenue for early adopter with respect to tech. So really talking about that tech spend. Reason I bring it up is that Horizon, the parent company of my publication, Financial Planning, American Banker, Bond Buyer, publications I know you all read every day. And if you don't, I can get you a subscription. I know a guy. But what we found in our annual tech survey, and we've done it for, I believe, the last 4 or 5 years, this includes decision makers, C-suite executives who are just talking about their priorities for spend in the upcoming year. Technology outpaced every other priority group above advisor training, above even client recruitment. Tech was number one across the board. So I don't know if we can put a fine number on exactly that amount, but I do think it's safe to say that tech is being prioritized over several other parts of the practice. I don't know if you guys would see the same.
Yeah, we had some stats that we pulled earlier this year from some of the market research analysts like Gartner and Celent, and they were studying the spend across the front, middle, and back office. And so, before the pandemic and during the pandemic, there was just this continued acceleration of improving that front office experience because we had to, right? We had to change the way we were operating overnight. But then what it shined a light on was how inefficient the middle and the back office of our wealth firms really are. And so what we've seen is a shift where more than 50% of the investment now is being prioritized on reducing complex tech stacks, focusing on process automation, robotics, chatbots, reimagining service experiences. Many firms still trying to go mobile, but go mobile with the ability to transact mobilely so you can meet clients where they want to be met. So that would be my perspective on the spend.
Yeah. And what we're seeing in the certainly in the RIA space is really progressive modern growth firms are spending 20 to 25% of their total budget on technology right now. We're running up, right? They get into a maintenance mode and it drops down to 10 to 15%, and those are just trying to keep the lights on, or 10% or less. So it's becoming a bigger part of the budget for sure.
Definitely. And the reason I wanted to talk about that budget was another study we did just focused on enthusiasm for new tech that isn't exactly widely adopted, but AI, for example. We did an internal study comparing the wealth management industry to other financial services industries. So it was wealth management, banking, mortgage, and insurance. And what we found is that in terms of enthusiasm, wealth managers were open to or excited about the idea of AI at a rate 3 times higher than the next nearest industry, which was banking, which was really surprising because it doesn't. Now, on the adoption side, totally different situation. Number of firms using AI in actionable or tangible ways right now, much lower. But that appetite, that attitude is there. Wilbur, I'd love to get your thoughts on, one, hearing that so many people are jazzed up for AI, even though it's not widely being adopted yet. But your thoughts on, I guess, that willingness to change the way we've always done business.
Yeah, I think that stat is great. I mean, I was listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast, much like this, and he was interviewing Eric Schmidt, former chairman, CEO of Google. great high-level conversation, and he asked him what's coming in the next 5 years, and it was shocking to me. Eric said, it's all about AI-based research assistance. Mm-hmm. That's what's his big thing, and that resonated with me because I came from Thomson Reuters and Refinitiv, where we're doing a lot of work to help knowledge workers be more efficient at their jobs, find the information at the right time. I know, Andrea, you were talking about this, like how do you become super efficient in every meeting, preparing for meetings, keeping track of everything that's going on while not having to research all the idea, but basically having these AI-based assistants that are doing the work for you and surfacing up information that you can tap and bring into meetings in a super efficient basis. At Thomson, we were doing a lot of the work on this for investment bankers, traders, as you can imagine. Even the lawyers are using this extensively behind the scenes. And also in the wealth management space, they're working on some interesting techniques. I personally think that the key to all of this is just, again, crawl, walk, run, try things, experiment, and then begin to walk faster and run with it. And I also think that it has to have practical application. Like there's a lot of AI out there that people are, they just reach too far and it becomes not relevant to my day-to-day workflow. So it's kind of like, how do you make a research assistant that's almost like your sales assistant, right? Like the kid from college that you would hire that would otherwise do this research on Google, right. And build these profiles of your prospects and then begin thinking about them more intelligently. That's the way I approach it.
Very cool, very cool. And I want to jump into a question that also is one of the topics I know we wanted to get into, which is service. How are advisory firms modernizing their approach to service? We see a question here from my good friend Anonymous. Talk about the ongoing client service, the one-to-many approach, communicating market views or thoughts about certain topics. And Michelle, this is something I really wanted to get your thoughts on as far as that approach to modernizing service, what that means, what it means considering the options clients have today. How are advisors looking at service today, and how is tech changing that?
Yeah, so we hear this theme quite a bit right now. It's probably one of the top priorities on a lot of the wealth firms that I talk to, is they're kind of taking a lens, going inward and saying, are we good at service? Do our clients trust us? Are they loyal to us? And so there's a lot of studying that these firms are doing to say, if they're not loyal, why? And that's starting to point to cracks in fragmentation in the different business processes that they try to execute and manage. So many firms are trying to move from a single service experience, a one-size-fits-all experience, to multi-channel and very personalized. And this gets back to the conversation of, when is it appropriate for a bot to be presented to a client? And what's the line between annoying them or giving them easy access to a human? And they can get to that when they want to. So firms are trying to figure that out. Here at Salesforce, we're in the process of rolling out Einstein bots. But I think what we've learned from the clients that have experimented is that bots are appropriate for the more simplistic, requests. When it comes to complex requests, and now it's about routing to a specialist. Don't just send me to Michelle, and Michelle knows nothing about this complex business problem I'm having, because that's going to frustrate me, right? Maybe you're going to send me to Andrea because she has expertise. So they're getting much more, their design thinking about where to route these calls, and then making sure that their talent bench has the right talent on that bench to solve those issues. The third is robotic process automation. So now they're looking at what tasks take up a lot of our time where we could retool that talent in our organization and let robotics go and do those checks, move the workflow faster. And so a lot of firms are looking at that. So those are different angles of service. At Salesforce, an exciting launch that's happening now is we've built a service console. So imagine anybody in a contact center, in a customer service team, or even the advisor themselves can now see this dashboard, and it's everything that's happened to Michelle in your organization. They have an interaction timeline, so I can see every interaction with anybody in that wealth firm that Michelle's had over time, and I can also see next best actions, suggested alerts. I think the idea behind service is make advisors appear proactive and knowledgeable, and that they know everything about that client instead of reactive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I still have some more great questions coming in. We actually have a trio of questions that aren't directly but somewhat tangentially related. So I'm going to roll them all in together into one, I guess, topic point for us to jump into. One question we have is for independent advisors. We're seeing consolidation, one-stop shops, Orion, Investnets of the world. Do you think that'll continue? Another great question is why tech solutions are so siloed and when will that change? As a solo advisor, it's frustrating. You pay for so many different tech pieces, but it's all siloed. It's frustration because they don't play well with each other. And this last question, is it easy to add and chase the latest tech? Any thoughts on subtracting to improve the client and team experience? So all of those questions get into what we've seen at financial planning in our coverage, which is identified as the number one pain point, is that question of integration. You have to be able to stay fluid, flexible, but at the same time, you bring things in, it might piss off some of your other tech because it doesn't exactly know what language that is speaking. And again, we talk about being able to weave that in with personalization. It's rough.
Yeah.
So anyone, feel free to jump in on that question.
Can I jump in?
Jump in. I
Wilbur
definitely
wants
have
to jump
opinions.
in with both feet. Watch out. Get
I'll
in there.
try.
Okay.
I'll try. Well, I think the platform versus fragmentation. I mean, you look at Kitsis's map, and there's a lot of fragmentation in this space. It's amazing. But I think there's so much innovation going on with these startups that I think there will always be that tension between platform and sort of edge innovation that's going on. And I think as long as the VCs see the upside there, they'll continue funding that edge innovation. So I don't think the startups are going away. And I personally think that's great because it pushes the industry faster forward and forward. I think Craig Iskovitz came out with a great piece recently about a call in the industry to just get more standardization around APIs and really trying to monitor APIs across the industry. I think that is a great. I don't know if he's here. Is Craig here? I know
if he is.
I think
Shouts out to Craig.
But I think that's really the key to it, right? Like we right now are doing some work with UI, but we really think the power of this is as an insight engine, and we want to, we're building out APIs so we can integrate super fluidly. I think the APIs will get easier and easier to integrate as the technology advances, and then it becomes more or less turnkey integration to the big platforms that people are using. Definitely.
Yeah.
Can I jump in on that?
Absolutely.
What we're seeing, the problem isn't the tools. Mm-hmm. The challenges that we're seeing and kind of the number one thing that clients are coming to us right now for is the data. Is having a modern, scalable, flexible data architecture that can work with either a platform or siloed solutions. Because, to your point, there's a lot of really great innovative tools out there that have a niche spot in the platform, in the ecosystem. And you have to have your data structured to be able to flow through all the systems. So that's the problem. Back to kind of starting at the beginning. You want to start at the beginning of the relationship when you think about your technology, but you got to start with the data before you even get to the technology. So
I'll add one last point about why is it siloed, why is it fragmented. I think most wealth firms and many advisors, utopia is the unified platform experience, but many wealth firms have proprietary experiences that they built over many, many years, and now they're trying to unwind out of that. They've bolted on many solutions, and they give their advisors a lot of choice, right? So you have a lot of wealth firms that are offering multiple financial planning tools, multiple CRM tools, multiple portfolio management tools, right? But they're only deeply integrating with maybe one of each, and the rest are single sign-ons. And so these advisors are navigating all of that. Like I had one firm, their transformation was trying to reduce their tech footprint from 26 systems that their advisors could touch or go in between on any given day. So what we're starting to see is firms really being smart and saying, who could be our most strategic partners and what capabilities can those partners solve for us so we can reduce that complexity? I think Andrea is right about the data. So many firms are dealing with bad data, messy data, don't know what to do with the data, don't know how to make it actionable. And so they are coming to firms like us and saying, can you help solve for that, right? Help us with these dashboards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I want to thank folks again for bringing in your questions. We're coming up on the 5-minute warning as we wrap up, and want to actually kind of transition to predicting the future a little bit. This is future-proof after all. Let's get into helping advisors figure out what's next, what's coming, how to win that race against obsolescence that we're all trying to win. And what comes to mind is actually on day one of the conference, Oleg Tishkevich of Invent talked about, what might be possible, far-reaching stuff. He kind of compared the idea of next-gen tech being like Tom Cruise in Minority Report, swiping away problems and using the precogs to make sure that the end client is satisfied. Just thoughts on anyone, feel free to jump in, and what do you think is next? And, I'll start with you, Andrea, at F2, again, ear to the streets. What do you think is going to be that next bleeding-edge technology that will really reshape our industry in the future?
Well, I think there's easy stuff. The low-hanging fruit is the Siri or Alexa type of experience where you're on a video conference and information is coming up in real time, so you can respond. Kind of like the sportscasters who are throwing out the stats, right? They don't have all that in their head. That's being fed up to them. The last time this guy saw so and so on the mound, he was 0 for 3. That type of commentary. So that's the easy stuff. The exciting stuff is really in the augmented reality and virtual reality. So using virtual reality to train new advisors. We've got a lot of people coming out of school who are kind of book smart. They've passed the test, but they haven't had the experience of working with clients before, and they can shadow, and that's great, and they can role play with their team members. That's great. But actually being able to kind of sit and experience working with the client, moving that forward to having that virtual reality experience with your clients. So it goes beyond the Zoom screen, and it's much more interactive, and you can begin to see how kind of people feel and experience their emotions. And then the really fun stuff that I'd love to see is imagine being able to step into your financial plan, right? In an augmented reality. You can see your goals out there on the horizon as you're making decisions, as you're earning and spending and investing, and that horizon comes nearer, farther, and obstacles pop up. I think that would be really fun, kind of the gamification of it, especially as we're trying to get younger people engaged and involved in planning and investing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyone else thoughts on predicting the future? Tech you think could come or you would love to see adopted just to make, your lives easier, advisors' lives easier, and clients' lives better at the end of the day?
Well, I'm on my second Tesla. I think they're pretty cool. So I think that if they could bring in some of the wealth, experience into that Tesla dashboard, so I'm not having to be in the advisor's office, but I could be talking to my advisor while I'm driving my Tesla, seeing my data, taking an action. I think that'd be pretty cool.
That's all right.
I'll throw out a quick one. So I love technology that allows people to flip the script, basically, and think about things differently. So in our world, we're like, why do you focus on only the 5 leads you're talking to? Focus on everybody you know. Think about everybody you know as your lead, and then think about who across that universe is your best prospect. There's a startup in labs called Safer that's basically approaching how do advisors create marketing materials and basically using it as like a Grammarly type experience, like helping them write it so it's compliant from the start. Again, flipping the script so that by the time it goes into your compliance office, they're just like, done, go out. Versus, the 2 or 3 days or a week long delay that you see. I love when you can do that kind of stuff and just rethink a whole process.
Yeah. I'll give one example. We're running out of time, but there's some pretty cool fintechs out there. And when you think about the next gen, right, how do you engage them? We know that the next gen, the youngest generation, values their peers' advice probably more than anybody else, more than their parents, more than their advisors.
Yes.
They value peer advice, right?
Yep.
So some of these fintechs are coming up and offering, like one of them is called Status Money. It's free, number one. They can see how they compare to their peers anonymously on debt, on equity, on savings, on credit score. But what it also does is let them lob out any questions, almost like a Facebook experience. I'm about to rent my first apartment. Anybody done that before? And you can respond anonymously. And the last thing I'll point to...
Such an opportunity for planners.
That's right. So what they're also doing is making planning very accessible. They know that these young investors don't have a lot of money, and so they have this rotation of advisors from different firms that will offer up a 1-hour conversation on a given month, and that young investor can pay like $10. So they're connecting all these things, making it very sticky.
Definitely. And I want to jump into this kind of at the buzzer question for you, Michelle. I think it's great because we talk about learning how clients feel and understanding that on a personal level. But this question, elaborate on how we can make back office team members happier and more productive with technology. So how clients feel, but how does the back office feel, and how can tech make their lives easier?
I think number one for our back office people, give them job security. Make them feel like just because technology is coming in that their jobs are not at risk. So I sit in front of a lot of firms where those folks are at the table listening to these transformation plans. I think that's number one. Number two is upskilling them. So when you're going to introduce these new technologies that are going to change the way they've done things for 10 or 20 years, make them part of that process. Give them a seat at the table. Give them a vote. They are the smartest people in your shops, right? They know how everything ticks and if it's going to work and if it's going to get adopted. I think the other is to grow them. Don't let them get stuck and stagnant being that new account processing person for 10 years. Start to move them away. Bring in someone new that can take that over and put them on a new business process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can I jump in? As COO of F2 Strategy, I live that every day. Right? You know, I just recently put out a piece on the marriage between tech and ops, and I think that's also critical as well. You can't go into any technology initiative without actively engaging your operations team. You've got to be on the same path, marching towards the same goals, you know, working together, being brought into the experience early on so that they've got kind of a vested interest in the success of the technology. Because if you've got competing visions,
for sure,
it's just going to fail.
Yeah, embrace it. It's not a matter of man versus machine. It's a matter of ready or not.
Right.
So get ready or you'll be a not. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. That's our time. Another round of applause for our panelists, Michelle Feinstein, Wilbur Swan, Andrea Bornstein-Bayer. Thank you guys for joining us.